Deputy Higgins, thank you.
Tanaiste James Connolly Hospital in Blanchardstown is a vital acute facility for 330,000 people from Meath to West Dublin to Kildare to North West Dublin. The HSE recently demanded a costing on what it would save to go from a 24-hour accident and emergency service to a 12-hour. Minister Riley said on Monday at the hospital there was no plans for this. We accept that for the moment and park it. But this morning comes devastating news, with staff getting a memo in the hospital stating that 12 beds in the acute Laurel ward out of 31 are closed with immediate effect, that a surgical day ward with 24 beds will be closed for 2 weeks shortly. It will come back after that with only 8 out of 24 beds, which means that 30 to 40 day procedures will now be reduced to 10 or 13. Tanaiste, this is devastating news for the staff in the hospital, for the patients, and particularly for those suffering on waiting lists. This arises from the most draconian cuts. From 2009, the hospital had a budget of 104 million. This year, 84 million, a devastating cut of 20%. The HSE acknowledges that this is one of the best and most efficient hospitals in the country. They have turned in hospital what they call activity, 4% over target, supremely successful, and now it is being hammered into the ground with huge consequences in terms of the sick and suffering languishing longer on waiting lists. Tanaiste, can you be serious in standing over this devastation of this facility, like in other parts of the country, named incidentally after a great socialist, James Connolly, and at the same time 17 billion, we are told last week in a parliamentary reply, in interest payments alone
Can we have the question
to
now,
the
please?
Anglo-Irish bank bondholders in the next 20 years, on top of the 30 billion of the bailout. Isn't that absolutely breathtaking?
Thank you, Deputy.
Can I ask you to demand the immediate reversal of these cuts to this critical hospital facility?
Thank you, Deputy. Tanaiste?
Well, as Deputy Higgins said, he referred to a circular which was issued to staff, I understand, this morning. No, I haven't seen that circular, and I don't know what's in it, and I don't know how. I don't know. No, you told me your version of it, and you described it. You described it. You described it. No, you described it. You described it.
For the answer, thanks very much.
You described it. You described it in apocalyptic terms,
as normal,
as devastating. Now let's calm down here now, Deputy Higgins. As you acknowledged, the Minister for Health assured you that the 24-hour accident and emergency service would remain at that hospital, and you've acknowledged that. All hospitals obviously have to operate within their budgets. The government's policy is to ensure that hospitals operate and function in the way that best serves the patients. That means, Deputy, that there will be changes, from time to time in the way in which services are provided in individual hospitals. It will mean that there will be changes as between hospitals as to what procedures are performed in one hospital as against another. That in turn will mean that there will be implications for what wards are used, what numbers of beds are used in a particular unit of a hospital, and so on. I think what we have to do is we have to look at the overall level of service here. This is an issue that the Health Committee of the Government was considering yesterday, how the best service can be provided to the patients of this country, to people who need our hospital services, in a way that is cost-effective, in a way also that is managed in the most efficient way possible. That obviously is something that has to be addressed by the management in individual hospitals, including the management of James Connolly Hospital, which you acknowledge is a very fine hospital and provides very fine services. But to represent the situation as though there was some kind of a government agenda about closing down hospitals and closing down hospital services, nothing could be further from the truth. What the government is seeking to do is to ensure that the patients of this country get the best possible hospital service, the best possible health service within the limited resources that are now available to us.
Thank you. Deputy Higgins.
I said nothing about closing down the hospital. You waffled around the issue. What happened to your outrage when you were sitting over there about the devastating effect of health cutbacks, the suffering on the waiting lists, the fact of working class people, ordinary working people and middle and lower income who can't afford private insurance? What happened about your concern for them? The fact is that the budget is set arbitrarily. A cut of 20 million is absolutely devastating. And it's not any good to talk about an overall level of service, hinting that perhaps some other hospital like Beaumont can provide this. Beaumont and the Mater are already under the most devastating pressure. And yes, it is apocalyptic if you are waiting for these procedures, and now you have a wholesale lessening of services. That is grievous suffering and huge pressure on the staff. And
we have your supplementary question now, please.
I would remind you that doctors who take very seriously their responsibility in Blanchardstown have delivered massively, have written to us, public reps, and to you two colleagues, Minister Burton and Varadkar, who are betraying the hospital, to say we cannot guarantee that it will be safe to continue with this level of cuts. Now, Tanaiste, again I ask you, will you recalibrate the balance? Stop paying some of this disgusting interest to European gamblers and reverse the cuts to Blanchardstown, to other hospitals I can say as well, but particularly in this case, because I'm addressing it this morning, to Blanchardstown Hospital, a critical facility for a critical part of the Greater Dublin, Kildare and Meath areas.
Tanaiste.
Well, first of all, can I assure Deputy Higgins that I feel exactly the same way today as I did this time last year, or this time 10 years ago, about the necessity to provide the best possible care for people who get sick and who need hospital services. Now, what we have to do is we have to provide that care within the resources that are available to us. No, hold on. Stop your populist. Stop your populist.
You asked your question.
No.
You asked your question. Now wait for the answer.
Stop your populist. Stop your populist claptrap now, Deputy Higgins. Because if we were to take the advice, if we were to take your advice, Deputy Higgins, here's Deputy Higgins's solution. Stop paying the interest. Deputy Higgins, you pay interest on money you borrow. If you stop paying interest on money you're borrowing, they'll no longer lend it to you. And if we are in a position that we can no longer borrow as a country, how on earth are you going to keep the hospitals open? Where will the hospital services be then? I mean, this kind of idea.
Would you please quieten down?
This kind of idea that you can have great hospital services if you stop paying the interest. If you stop paying the interest, Deputy Higgins, you will have no money in which to run hospital services or any other service for that matter. Now let's deal with the reality here. We have to provide, and I've said this before, we have to provide the best quality.
What are you saying, Martin? We can't hear you.
The best quality of hospital services that is possible. That means, Deputy Higgins, that means that we have to change the way in which some of our hospitals are run. We have to change the way in which some of our hospital services are delivered. Those changes are being made and will be made. In addition to that, In addition to that, Deputy Higgins, this government is committed to the most radical reform of our health services that we have seen, and the introduction of a system of universal health insurance that will ensure that into the future the people of this country will have a decent health service, decent hospitals, and yes, that the best quality of service will be provided in Blanchardstown and every other hospital as well. And that will come, and that will come, that will come. That will come not by making the kind of great, outlandish, broad, grandstanding kind of statements that you're making, Deputy Higgins. It will be done by this government doing its job, making sure that the economy recovers and making sure that we implement the reforms in the health service and in our public services that will deliver the best quality of service to the patient.
Thank you. Now, settle down.